Italian President Sergio Mattarella is in the middle of a state visit to China. How productive will his visit be? And the first round of peace talks on Syria in 10 months is taking place in Geneva, Switzerland. I had an exclusive interview with the Chinese government's special envoy on the Syria issue. Welcome to The Point. I'm Liu Xin. US President Donald Trump has declared China the grand champions of currency manipulation just hours after his new Treasury Secretary pledged a more methodical approach to analyzing Beijing's foreign exchange practices. In an exclusive interview with Reuters, Trump said he had not held back in his assessment that China manipulates its currency, despite not acting on a campaign promise to declare the country a currency manipulator on his first day in office. During his presidential campaign, he frequently accused China of keeping its currency artificially low against the US dollar to make Chinese exports cheaper and, quote-unquote, steal American manufacturing jobs. But US Treasury Secretary Stephane Mnuchin has said he is not ready to pass judgment on China's currency practices. Mnuchin told CNBC that he would follow the normal process of analyzing the currency practices of all major US trading partners. He said, "We are not making any judgments until we continue that process." Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry says that it has repeatedly stated its position is that China will continue to reform the RMB exchange rate regime and keep the currency at a reasonable and equilibrium level, while also stressing that China does not deliberately devalue its currency. The International Monetary Fund last year said the RMB's value was broadly in line with its economic fundamentals. The US Treasury also said in its last currency report last October that its view of China's external imbalances had improved. So with so many about turns coming from the president, it is more and more difficult to take what Trump says at face value. In this case, I'd rather respond to his actions than his words. In another story, panda diplomacy is nothing new. I'll bet there were a few tears shed when Bao Bao, whose name means precious or treasure, was getting ready to board her flight back from the United States to Chengdu in China. Bao Bao was born at the National Zoo in Washington to panda parents on loan from China. According to China's panda loan program, panda cubs must be returned to China before they are 4 years old, the earliest age at which they might begin breeding. Bao Bao has spent her entire 3 years in the US and is unfamiliar with hearing the Chinese language. She will also need to learn to adapt to local bamboo and Chinese food, such as steamed bread made from corn, soybeans, rice and eggs. She's now in quarantine for a month before she's allowed to mix with other pandas. Now, between 1958 and 1982, China lent 23 pandas to 9 different countries. For my part, I've reported several times on the baby pandas that were born in Schönbrunn Zoo in Vienna, and I know that every time when the panda cubs were sent back to China, it was an emotional experience for both the visitors to the zoo and the zookeepers. But everyone understood the practice and the fact that the panda numbers have grown and the animal has been taken off the endangered species list by the World Wildlife Fund owes to the collective efforts of all of these people around the world. So many thanks to all of you. Italian President Sergio Mattarella is in the middle of a state visit to China. He held talks with the Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday, pledging to enhance bilateral ties from a strategic and long-term perspective and advance the relationship to a higher level. Xi called on two countries to maintain high-level exchanges and close cooperation between their governments, legislative institutions and political parties. For more on this, I'm joined in the studio by Francesco Sisci, a senior research fellow and Italian sinologist, and Wang Yiwei, director of the Center for EU Studies, also from Renmin University in China. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me in the studio. Mr. Sisci, let me come to you first. You're from Italy, so tell us, please, against the current background in Italy and in Europe, what is the significance of the president's visit this time?
I think the significance is political, symbolic, that we are in the middle of a political crisis in Italy and in Europe, and in these times usually the president doesn't move, but the fact that actually President Mattarella wanted in these dangerous times to come to China means that China is important for Italy and I would say also for Europe. So it's a political gesture of a long-term planning for Italy and for Europe as well.
And I understand this is also his first visit to China since he became president. Mr. Wang, let me come to you. Why do you think the leader from Italy and the leader from France are in China almost at the same time? We know the French Prime Minister Cazeneuve was here just a couple of days ago. Was that a coincidence, or is there a meaning behind such diplomatic arrangement?
Actually, Prime Minister of Finland also is coming, so some more European leaders gathered in Beijing. I think Europeans pay more and more attention to China, not only economic trade, but also political, as I said. When President Trump took power, I think globalization, multilateralism, global governance, big power corporations, all this questionable. And internally, as the Netherlands and France and Germany, they have their elections, many uncertainties. It's the most difficult time for the European integration. And China, I think, among all the big powers, the most support of the European integration. Even more supported than some European countries like UK. So I think the need, for a multipolar world, I think need each other.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Sisci, you said they need some very important messages, but what do you think they need from the part of China to bring back to Italy?
Well, Italy now is in a very difficult situation. They would need, of course, economic cooperation. And ideally, the One Belt, One Road would, in ancient time at least, ended in Italy, and in theory there is the possibility to invest in ports and harbors that would revive the Mediterranean route, and this would also be interesting for China. However, because the political situation in Italy is extremely difficult, perhaps economic and commercial cooperation at the moment is maybe difficult. But it's important that at least the president is laying the foundation for future more concrete cooperation, which I would say perhaps small and medium enterprises are also quite interesting, could be also quite interesting for China and definitely for Italy because they create most jobs there.
Mm-hmm. Talking about domestic politics, what kind of timetable are we looking at in the next few months? For instance, we know we have the French presidential election coming up in April. What about the domestic calendar in Italy?
In Italy, we still don't know when the next elections will be. There is still a great debate. The main government party has just split in just past few days. And there is a huge debate about the election, should they be in June, in September or February next year. It's still very messy, but I would say first, yes, look at the French presidential election because they could have an impact in Italy, and then the Germans' elections. Once Germany and the situation there is somehow settled, things could get easier in Italy as well.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Wang, you're an expert on Belt and Road Initiative. I think one of the most important things that Chinese people, Chinese government and Chinese enterprises were picking out from what the Italian president has been saying is that they have strong support for the Belt and Road Initiative. How important is Italy for China's Belt and Road Initiative?
Well, the historic perspective, as you mentioned, the Roman Empire, that's a destination of the Asian Silk Road. When people talk about the Silk Road, we remember easily that Marco Polo and the Maturuzzi and all, from Italy, the cultural and civilization dialogue, and also trade. Today, even Italy also is still second largest, strongest of the industrial power in Europe after Germany. So China and Germany and Italy's cooperations, I think along the Belt and Road Initiative has a huge and a new potential because Italy is one of the founding nations of the European Union, and under the China-EU there are 5 major platforms like China-EU Mutual Connectivity Platform, and the EU has also invested a lot in a young plan to renovate it of your transportation system, single energy market, digital market, and China and Italy can cooperate to guideline of the China-EU corporations on high technology, small, middle-sized enterprises, and the design. I think when the Chinese economy structure changed from the export and focus more on the innovation design, I think we have many things to cooperate with Italy.
Let me just give a wild guess. In case things go really in the direction that most people fear, that the EU is the integration of European Union is really in danger, how will that affect China's cooperation with countries like Italy or France, especially in projects like the Belt and Road? Would you want to look into the crystal ball? What would be the worst case scenario?
The worst case scenario would be the fall of euro and then a global financial crisis. And this is, I would say, a few years ago this scenario was very unlikely. Now I wouldn't say it is probable, but it's possible. At least it's possible. This is the worst case scenario, and then if we have a global financial crisis, no, everything is up in the air. China and everybody in the world would be affected. Of course, everybody is also working against this scenario, but there are some parties, peoples, agencies which think or may think that they have something to gain in this worst case scenario. So it is a possibility.
Mr. Wang?
I hope it is not happening because
Right, so
the EU studies, if the EU clubs and definitely, what's the other regional integration, they don't have example in the hope. So we really hope that the European integration will move on to turn over the difficulty page, and but as I said, it depends on the European people. So definitely not so pessimistic, but also not so optimistic.
What about, let's talk about one last interesting point, which is design, or the textile industry, which is very strong for China and for Italy, of course, but we are probably at this time at a different level on the global value chain. People say made in Italy, they mean better design, higher quality, but when they say made in China, for the moment, still people associated with poorer quality but a cheaper price. What can these two countries cooperate? What opportunities are there?
In theory, a lot of opportunity, but there are lots of details that need fine-tuning. And I think both countries, we have to think about domestic market, and China especially, because it's such a huge potential consumer market. It has to think about ways to develop its internal market in cooperation with foreign countries. By doing it, actually the weight, political weight and economic weight of China could increase. Actually, one of the importance of America is that it is the largest importing market. So by importing, it can influence a lot of other economies and politics. So maybe China should also think about importing more to be more politically influential.
Mr. Wang, basically my question is, how can China and Italy connect their national development strategies? I mean, China has the Made in China 2025 and Italy has Industry 4.0. How do you think they can better connect these development strategies?
Even this is the sort of Belt and Road Initiative highlights that the synergy of the strategies. Right. You have the reindustrialization. China also have similar, projects. I think the still some you are middle, higher, and China in the middle. Some parts of the catch-up will still have to complementary space, and also China, Italy can jointly to discover the so-called the third market in Africa, in many other countries. And then this is not just win-win, but it's all win. I think as the Belt Road Initiative highlight.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. That was Professor Wang Yiwei from Renmin University and Italian sinologist Francesco Sisci. And you have been watching The Point here on CGTN. I'll take a short break and I'll be back right after that. To a heavier topic now. For the first time in 3 years, on Thursday, opposing sides in the Syrian war came face to face in the UN peace talks, looking for a way out of almost 6 years of war. Now that the war has killed some 400,000 people, injured another million, and displaced half of Syria's pre-war population. During the last round of Geneva talks 10 months ago, UN Special Envoy Stephane de Mistura had to shuttle between the Syrian government delegation and the opposition parties who never met in the same room. This time, however, all sides are seen to be meeting together in public. Now, the Geneva talks come on the heels of a meeting in January between Russia, Turkey and Iran in Astana, Kazakhstan. What can be expected from this round of talks? Earlier today, I had an exclusive interview with Ambassador Xie Xiaoyan, the Chinese government's special envoy on Syria, who is also in Geneva to participate in the talks.
I think this is, as everybody knows, a very complicated issue. There will not be any quick fix. I think all the parties, the regional countries, and indeed the international community will have to have patience, perseverance, and above all, I think they will have to have the creativity and imagination in order to try to find a final solution for the problem. But I do expect some kind of small but incremental progress along the way. And in achieving such a result, it is a step forward.
What do you mean by small and incremental steps along the way? Could you specify?
For instance, this is the first time that the government side and the opposition groups are meeting face to face after a long suspension of the peace talks. This in itself, I think, is small progress. They've also committed and reaffirmed their commitment to political settlement. Now they are willing to talk about peace settlement, how to form a transitional authority. They have reached another agreement in ceasefire. And so far, this time around, the ceasefire agreement is basically holding. All these, I think, have some positive effects to find a lasting solution that is fitting for Syria and acceptable to all sides.
Well, however, the UN Special Envoy for the Syria crisis, Stephane de Mistura, has expressed his low expectation ahead of this round of peace talks. Let's listen to this first.
Am I expecting a breakthrough? No, I'm not expecting a breakthrough, but I'm expecting and determined for keeping a very proactive momentum.
Now, earlier, some media also reported that the meeting in Astana, Kazakhstan last month ended without a breakthrough. Now, peace talks have been an ongoing process for a long time now, and it seems that peace is still very distant. How do you view this kind of embracing situation of those peace talks? Do they really achieve anything so far?
I tend to agree that there will not be a kind of a breakthrough that some people expect. As I said at the beginning, this is a very complicated problem with a lot of players with different interests, and the fact that they are willing to talk about the peace settlement is a step forward. And I think these step forward should be encouraged by the international community, by the United Nations and everybody involved in the conflict. I think if we keep moving along the direction, then finally, at some point, there could be a breakthrough, but not now.
Now, I know that you are also taking part in your capacity as China's special envoy for the Syria crisis in this round of talks. What exactly is China's position on this issue, and what are your main responsibilities? How are you involved in these talks?
China is now a player in the conflict, no, not in the conflict, in the issue. We are a member of the P5 of the UN Security Council, and as such, it is our responsibility to push forward for peace and stability and the political settlement in Syria. But for my own job as a special envoy of the Chinese government for the Syrian issue, since I took up the job last April, I've been traveling around in the region, in the Middle East, and I have visited about a dozen countries here. I've also visited Russia and the United States, meeting with officials, government officials, and people from, shall I say, research institutions and think tanks. And I've also attended the Geneva peace talks, as I did yesterday, and also in Geneva. And through these contacts, not only I personally have got some more information and clearer understanding of the situation in Syria, but also have the opportunity to exchange views with my counterparts in the foreign ministries of, say, the regional countries, the United States and Russia. But also I have the opportunity to explain China's position, what we have done, what we're going to do to lend a helping hand in bringing about peace and stability and the political settlement in Syria. And I think from my discussions and the contacts with these people, I have the impression that China's role in the whole Syrian issue is very much welcome. They say that China has been playing a very active, very productive and a constructive role in we have some special advantages.
Mm-hmm. What are the special? Yes, I'm very interested. I'm very interested in finding out what are the special advantages that China holds. We know that China is the only country among the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council that is not militarily involved in the Syria crisis. On top of that, what other special advantages does China have that you see, or China sees a potential greater constructive role that China can play in solving the Syria crisis?
I think, as I said, that we do have access to contacts with different parties in the conflict, both from the government side and also from the opposition groups. This is, I think, what I will call an advantage that some other countries don't enjoy. We also have wide range of contacts with both the United States and Russia, as these are the 2 major players in the conflict outside the region. But also we do have contacts with the regional countries. I visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Turkey, Iran. You know, the kind of contacts that some countries don't have them all. They may have access to one side of the group, but not the other side. We have access to both sides from different groups. This is in itself, I think, an advantage. But also, I think China is a country that takes a position that is welcome by both sides. We're not involved militarily, but we do contribute to the 4 major issues. They are the political settlement, ceasefire, fight against terrorism, and humanitarian relief.
That was my interview with China's special envoy on Syria, Ambassador Xie Xiaoyan, earlier today. And do tune in on Monday for the second part of this very interesting conversation. And as usual, don't forget to look at our content on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with Alex, all in one word. And you can watch our previous editions on CGTN's YouTube page. Click on the playlist and look for The Point with Liu Xin. By the way, on Saturday, I will take you live on our Facebook page to the only national laboratory of marine science and technology at Qingdao in East China. That's at 1600 Beijing time, which is 8 in the morning GMT. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you again on Monday at the same time.